his son-in-law was able to travel back home to Alabama. They've got, he's still, as Kenny said, he's really, really weak. He can't do hardly anything. And I said, I'm glad he's weak. If it had been you or me, we'd be dead. Anyway, he's coming along, but there's still a long way for him to go. And their family appreciates all of the prayers and support. And they will be, I said, he'll be back Tuesday. Dewey will probably be a few days after that. We're not sure yet on her because she's going to stay and try to help get the kids a little bit further along. And hopefully Tyler can get a little bit more strength before she leaves. So that's the status on that. All right, let's say a prayer. Our Holy Father, we praise you as our God, and we thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you for that we can be together, that we can support one another, strengthen one another, and that we can enjoy a study of your word, that we can enjoy learning what's in your word for us. And Lord, we ask that you would help us to learn from these stories, to repeat the things that are good, defeat us in the things that are wrong. And we ask, Lord, that you would please bless us as we try to serve you in this life. In Christ's name, amen. All right, so it's Easter morning, so we're going to talk about a bunch of bloody stuff, so that'll be good. We're in Judges, the 8th chapter, and we've been talking about Gideon and the army that the Lord reduced down to 300 people to take on the 134,000 of the Midianites and the Canaanites, and it is just an incredible story. And Gideon chased them afterwards. They destroyed the army. There was a remnant left. He went back after them, and then he stopped at a couple of towns along the way to try to get food for his armies. And they came back and said, "No, we're not feeding you because we're afraid of the Midianites." And then after he defeated the Midianites, they came back and destroyed those two towns. So he's become a legend, if you will, in that area for military prowess, and has knocked the Canaanites and the Midianites back on their heels. And so the people come to him and ask him to be their leader, and they want him to be their ruler. And he says, "No, God's going to be the one that rules over you. I'm not going to be your ruler, God will." Gideon may be the instrument of God for a while, but he's at least giving that glory to God. And then he does something interesting. We talked a little bit about it last week, where he asks them for some of their plunder that they've taken from the Midianites. The custom, still in war today, is when somebody's defeated in the battlefield, the soldiers get to take whatever's left, earrings, valuables, watches, guns, whatever it is. They get to take it. So they had taken all this jewelry and stuff from the Midianites, and it says they're Ishmaelites also. And he makes this ephod, which is just a big vest that's adorned with all this gold and jewelry and stones. And in the Old Testament, in the times of Moses, they had made one for Aaron and for the high priest, and it was something that they wore when they were communing with God and when they were offering sacrifices for the people. So it wasn't an unheard of thing. It was just something that he did. But then it says that it became a snare to Gideon. And we'll talk about that. We'll read this a little bit and talk about that. But what other instance does that remind you of?
Golden calf.
Yeah, the golden calf. Remember, Moses is up on the mountain, and he's up there too long, according to the people. You can't talk with God too long, you know. You're up there too long. And so Aaron takes earrings from the people, gold and earrings, and makes the golden calf. And, of course, his excuse to Moses is it just jumped out of the fire. I put it in the fire, and there came this calf. But that became a snare to the people, didn't it? And to Aaron, and it became another god. It became something they worshiped. And that seems to be the case, that this ephod became something that they treasured above treasuring God. Huh?
Well, when they crossed the Jordan River, they set up that, and nobody went
Ebenezer?
out, nobody went out and worshipped that.
Hopefully it got, I assume it got covered back up with water. But it's the same kind of deal. Yeah. For some reason, mankind has a need to visualize what it is I'm going to worship. You know, this represents my God. And in theory, there's nothing wrong with that, except when that becomes the God, and that becomes more important than serving God. When that idol, we've seen it in the Judges, we've seen it all the way through, where they set up idols in their house. They just dilute the serving of God. Yes.
I think it goes even a little bit farther than that, is that man is resistant to a greater power.
Well, that's
we can make something that's as good as God ourselves. I think that's where we get hung up on, is that
let's explore that a little bit. What does mankind tend to do with religion and with worship to God? Donna?
Reduce it to what we want it to be.
Yes. It has to make me happy, right? Has to make me feel good. That's what mankind does with worship. That's why they get off into idol worship. That's why in the time of the New Testament, the Corinthians had temples with prostitutes in them. And that was not the first time that happened in world history. Because that makes me feel good. I can enjoy this religion. Wait.
It's in our nature to do stuff like that, to have some image. And later in life, I always wondered, why did God come as a cloud or a rock?
Mm-hmm.
Because we can't make a cloud and there's an image. So
good.
God knows.
Good point.
Yeah, it's like a rock. If he would have came as like half eagle, half horse or something, we would have had so many images of that. So,
And we made up our own images even when he didn't make them for us. Yeah, it's just, that's what we see though in mankind today, is and it's been throughout history. This is nothing new under the sun, that we make God in our image rather than God being conformed to God's image. And that's what he's asked us to do, is to be like him. But we want to make him like us. You study Greek mythology. Do you see the gods in Greek mythology? Oh, they have very human characteristics because that's what we want to worship. We want to worship things like us. And that's just not what God has called us to. And so that's one of the things that we as Christians need to guard against, is polluting our worship and our service and our desire for God into something that just makes me feel good. There's nothing wrong with feeling good while you're serving God. I don't mean that. But it needs to be a deeper process than just, this makes me feel good. So let's start with, let's see, oh, I guess we're right at the end there. Yeah, we'll go on into chapter 9. Okay, so, well, at the end of chapter 8, it says that Israel went a-whoring after other gods and the Baals. So remember the cycles that Kenny has talked about in Judges, where they follow the Baals, then God raises somebody to deliver them from their oppression. They worship God for a while, there's a time of peace, and then they fall back into worshiping the idols. So this cycle has started again. All right, so let's, chapter 9, somebody read verses 1 through 6 for me. Who's got that? Warren, thank you.
And Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem to his mother's brothers, and spoke with them and with all the family of the house of his mother his father, saying, Please speak in the hearing of all the men of Shechem. Which is better for you, that all 70 of the sons of Jerubbaal reign over you, or that one reign over you? Remember that I am your own flesh and bone. And his mother's brothers spoke all these words concerning him in the hearing of all the men of Shechem. And their heart was inclined to follow Abimelech. For they said, He is our brother. So they gave him 70 shekels of silver from the temple of Baal-berith, which Abimelech hired worthless and reckless men, and they followed him. Then he went to his father's house at Ophrah, and killed his brothers, the 70 sons of Jerubbaal, on one stone. But Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, because he hid himself. And all the men of the came together, all of Beth Millo, and they went and made Abimelech king beside the terebinth tree at the pillar that was in Shechem.
Okay. So let's start with what else do we know about Shechem or Shechem, whichever way you want to say it. Where have you heard that name before? Heard of that place? Anybody remember? There was a story where Shechem, the son of Hamor, decided that Dinah, who is one of the sisters of the 12 tribes, the 12 sons of Jacob, was a pretty good looking lady. And he decided that he wanted her for a wife. And so he defiled Dinah and took her against her will. And the 12 sons of Jacob, who were not any shrinking violets, decided that them treating their sister that way was not a good thing. We're going to avenge this. And Jacob said, no, wait a minute, we can't do that. We need you to, I need you to stand down here a little bit. And the people of Shechem and Hamor, the father, came to Jacob and said, look, we want to have your daughters be our wives and our daughters be your wives, and let's, all live in peace together and it'll all be great. And the sons of Jacob said, deceitfully it says, well, we can't do that unless you're circumcised. So unless you guys are willing to be circumcised, this deal is not going to work. And so all the men of Shechem decide, okay, well, this will be all right. We'll get circumcised, and then we'll have this great relationship with between these families. And the sons of Jacob waited, it says, till the third day when they were sore, and then killed them all with a sword because they had defiled their sister and took their sister back. Pretty gruesome story. So Shechem has kind of a bloody history, if you will. And Abimelech doesn't do much to dispel that. He starts it off pretty bad. So what do we know about Abimelech? Whose son is he?
Gideon.
Gideon's. Who's his mom? A concubine, not a full wife. And he doesn't live at Ophrah, where Gideon and his family, the family home, he lives over near Shechem, which is a little bit away from there. So he's kind of an outcast from Gideon. He doesn't get the full credit as the rest of his sons do. And he doesn't get full credit for all the things that Gideon had done to save the Israelites. So Abimelech decides what? Ready?
Well, because of how he was born, he wasn't going to get any part of the inheritance anyway. So he goes out on his own, and he came up with a way not only to get some inheritance, but to get all the inheritance. And so he gets all the Shechem on his side, and then just wipes out all of his brothers, save one.
And the people of Shechem are his mother's family. They're his brethren. And we'll find out later that he doesn't really care who his brothers are on either side. That he's going to take care of them. So he devises this plan, goes to Ophrah, takes some of the men of Shechem with him, kills all the sons of Gideon, Jerubbaal as he's also known, except for this one son, Jotham, who hid himself, and he was able to escape from the slaughter, if you will. And how had the Shechemites participated in this killing? What had they done? What did they do for Abimelech?
They paid him out of the temple.
They gave him money.
They used that money to, my version says, hire scoundrels.
Yep, mine says vain fellows. Basically, Abimelech hired hitmen to go with him to kill his brothers. Paid mercenaries to go fight and kill his brothers all at this one place. Like I said at the beginning, the book of Judges is bloody. There's just no way around it. There is death and sacrifice and killing and intrigue and mystery, and there's some great stories here. Could you picture this as a movie? The intrigue and the betrayal and the twist in the plot and all that. This is a great story for something like that.
That's X-rated.
Yeah, yeah. It would definitely be rated pretty badly because of all the blood and gore. Yes, Luke.
Since I've interrupted you already,
No.
Let's see, verse 5, he killed his brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal, 70 men on one stone.
Mm-hmm.
What is the on one stone? It's just,
My impression of that is that he gathered them up and executed them. Instead of it being a battle, it's like, they just chop their heads off at one place or something like that.
Okay.
That's however he was able to gather them up. That's all I can think of on that.
That's a good enough definition. It's better than anything I had. Until later.
Yeah. So he's killed all his brothers, all but one. And this one gets away. So somebody read 7 through 21 for us of chapter 9. Who's got that? You want to, Artemi? Okay.
This being told to Jotham, he went and stood on the top of Mount Gerizim, and lifting up his voice, he cried and said, "Hear me, ye men of Shechem, so may God hear you." The trees went to anoint the king over them, and they said to olive tree, "Reign thou over us." And it answered, "Can I leave my fatness, which both goods and men make use of, to come and be promoted among the trees?" And the tree said to the fig tree, "Come thou and reign over us." And it answered them, "Can I leave my sweetness and my delicious fruits, and go to be promoted as among the other trees?" And the tree said to the vine, "Come and reign over us." And it answered them, "Can I forsake my wine that cheers God and man, and be promoted among the other trees?" And all the trees said to the bramble, "Come thou and reign over us." And it answered, "If indeed you mean to make me a king, come and rest under my shadow. But if you mean it not, let fire come out from the bramble, and devour the cedars of Lebanon. Now therefore, if you have done well, and without sin in appointing Abimelech the king over you, you have dealt with the Jerubbaal and with his house, and have made a suitable return for the benefits of him who fought for you, and exposed his life to dangers to deliver you from the hands of Midian. And you are not now risen up against my father's house, and killed the sons of 70 men upon the stone, and have made Abimelech the son of his handmaid king over the inhabitants of Shechem, because he's your brother. If therefore you have dealt well without fault with Jerubbaal and his house, rejoice this day in Abimelech, and may he rejoice in you. But if unjustly, let fire come out from him, and consume the inhabitants of Shechem and town of Melo, and let the fire come out of men of Shechem, and from the town of Melo, and devour Abimelech. And when he had this, he fled, and he went into Berah, and dwelt there for the fear of Abimelech his brother.
Okay, so Jotham isn't happy about what's gone on, obviously, and he runs to the top of Mount Gerizim. And I always wonder, how in the world can these people hear him? You hear about them shouting from the mountaintops at different places, and you think, he's given this whole story and prophecy. So there's got to be some word of mouth things going on here. I can't imagine that. I mean, I know natural amphitheaters, you can hear a lot, but I don't think Abimelech and his men were really interested in paying attention to what Jotham had to say, since he was cursing them. So somehow this story gets out, and he gives this prophecy of the trees. And the trees wanted a ruler. And he goes to 3 different types. He goes to an olive tree, a fig tree, and a vine, or they go, to ask him to be king, and they all turn him down. What's important about those 3 types of bushes or trees or plants? Your guess is as good as mine, by the way.
I guess if they bear fruit.
They bear fruit for sure. And I think that they were an important part of the life of the Jews. The olive oil, we know that was used for anointing, for all kinds of things. The figs is anytime a land is represented as, healthy and lush, there's fig trees and there's figs that you can eat. And Christ condemned the fig tree for not bearing fruit. Remember when he walked by on the side and cursed that tree because it didn't have any figs on it when it should have had figs on it. So it's something important to them. And then the grapes, obviously the fruit of the vine and wine was used, well, even here it says it cheers God and man. It was something that they used commonly in their just day-to-day lives. James?
Yeah, I've always wondered about this and just kind of figured it was also some sort of comparison between something like a tree. Even a tree in the Middle East is going to be a lot bigger, more majestic somehow than the vines and the other things. But even then, they're kind of metaphorically speaking and saying, we have our own use, we have our own purpose. Mm-hmm. And then what I see is kind of like a majestic tree goes and turns to a tumbleweed. And it's like, this is, you be the king of everything. It's a very odd but interesting story.
It is strange, Randy.
Something else, so to become the king, something is going to have to be given up. There's a price to be paid. And the price isn't going to go to the glory of God. Each one of these trees and vines that had a purpose, they would have to give that purpose up. Mm-hmm. And you look at Abimelech, when he became the king, everything about God was given up.
Yeah, these all served a purpose. They would be a natural, if you consider yourself a tree, it would be a natural to go to somebody that could provide something for you, and this is who you want to rule over you. Somebody that can provide you food or can provide you shelter. And in his prophecy here, when he talks about the bramble, he says that the bramble would even destroy the cedars of Lebanon, which are great big trees. If you'll remember when Solomon built the temple, that the cedars of Lebanon was the wood that was brought down in order for them to build the temple. So these were big, heavy timbers. And his prophecy here is that this wild Bermuda grass, thorn bush, tumbleweed, whatever you want to picture it as, bramble that has no use is going to destroy even the best of you. It's even the strongest of you. This guy is going to tear you down, and that's his prophecy. That is it's pretty brash, isn't it? He's just killed 70 of his brothers on a stone and taken over their city, and this guy gets up on the hill and says, "You just wait. You just wait. You're going to get yours. You're going to put this bramble in front of as your king, and fire's going to come out of him and destroy you all." So, what we don't know about Jotham is what his relationship with God was before, but evidently he took some strength from Gideon and or Jerubbaal and followed his lead in some form or fashion, because God was speaking through him to these people of Shechem and to Abimelech. And as we'll find out, his prophecy comes true. Who can read 22 through 29? Oh, thank you, James.
Abimelech commanded Israel for 3 years. God sent a spirit to stir up hostility between Abimelech and the leaders of Shechem. He made the leaders of Shechem disloyal to Abimelech. He did this so the violent deaths of Jerubbaal, 70 sons, might be avenged, and Abimelech, their half-brother who murdered them, might have to pay for their spilled blood, along with the leaders of Shechem who helped him murder them. The leaders of Shechem rebelled against Abimelech by putting bandits in the hills, who robbed everyone who traveled by on the road. But Abimelech found out about it. Gaal, son of Ebed, came through Shechem with his brothers. The leaders of Shechem transferred their loyalty to him. They went out to the field, harvested their grapes, squeezed out the juice, and celebrated. They came to the temple of their God, and ate, drank, and cursed Abimelech. Gaal, son of Ebed, said, "Who is Abimelech, and who is Shechem, that we should serve him? Is he not the son of Jerubbaal, and is not Zebul the deputy he appointed? Serve the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem. But why should we serve Abimelech? If only these men were under my command, I would get rid of Abimelech." He challenged Abimelech, "Muster your army and come out for battle."
Okay, so they get 3 years of relative peace. Most of the others, when they says there's peace, it says there's peace for 30 years or there's peace for 40 years. They get a whopping 3 out of this one. I don't know about you guys, but as I get older, 3 years goes by really quick. So Abimelech was not there for very long in peace. And what's happened now? What's happened to the people of Shechem? Where's their allegiance now?
Against. But don't people in the Old Testament have a really hard time noticing that life is going badly? I must have done something wrong. But that doesn't occur to them.
No.
Life's going badly, I'll just keep on this way.
It is amazing. In 3 years, the Shechemites have gone from, we're going to pay to help you kill your brothers, to we think you're the worst guy in the world and we're going to align with your enemy. See what not putting your trust in God does for you? Putting your trust in men. Men aren't very reliable. They will change their mind with whatever the political winds are blowing. They didn't like Abimelech's rule, and so we're going to start being subversive. We're going to put bandits up on the hills. We're going to make it so that your kingdom is not at peace. It's not a safe place to be. People get robbed here. And it's going to undermine his authority. You know, we see that today in places where the police officer in New York that got shot just recently. And when people don't pay attention to laws, when they want to sow chaos, it reflects on the leaders, doesn't it? Because they're not keeping us safe. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or we wouldn't have this. And that's the situation Abimelech has found himself in. All of a sudden, his kingdom is not safe. It's not a happy place. John?
Well, in my mind, I think, how could he ever think that he would have a good rule? I mean, it started off with the killing of 70 of his half-brothers.
Yep.
Or 69, I guess one got away. But, I mean, just, and the people who supported him. How could you follow someone who would do that to his own family? What's he going to do to us?
What slips through the crack in all this, or did in my mind as I was reading it the first couple times, they're his family too. This is his mom's side of the family. That's where he was living with. So they helped him kill his dad's side of the family, and now they're turning against him. Again, that allegiance to man just doesn't always work out too well for you. Your allegiance needs to be to God. But isn't that kind of a weird twist in this story? The same people, his family, that helped him rise to power, kill his other brothers, and start his rule, are now the ones that are turning against him and are unhappy with him. The very people who helped him pay to hire the hitman. That's, I mean, talk about getting your comeuppance. It's turning around on you. Yeah, James.
Well, I mean, it says in verse 23, God sent an evil spirit.
Yep.
This is all God's doing.
Oh, absolutely.
He is, Abimelech thinks he's got, he's had 3 years, I don't know if it's peace, but he's
At least power.
Right, 3 years of power, and God said, okay, it's time for this to end. You're not going to remain in power. This is not my plan.
Reminds me so much of he that thinks he stands, take heed lest he fall. That kind of a truism that we ought to remember more than we do. We think we have control, don't we? We think that we know what's going on and we control our lives. And that can be disrupted in seconds. I mentioned on Wednesday night, those 8 construction workers on that bridge, taking a break, probably listening to the radio, eating a sandwich, having a cup of coffee in their cars because it was cold. And then ship hits that bridge and boom, down it goes in seconds. You don't have any control. Those guys were doing nothing wrong. They were working to provide for their families. They were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And things happen. And there's just things in your life you can't control. And especially not if God's on the other side saying, you've gotten too big for your britches here. You are going to be taken down because you haven't been following. Randy?
I think it's interesting you said they got too big for their britches. Shechem is not a power city.
No.
Shechem is a small city. And the smaller they get, they still are thorn in Israel's side. As you go through Kings, their name's going to come up again.
Yep.
And they're referred to often. So Shechem, even though they're just a blip on the map, has the ability to destroy God's people.
Yep. They mess with them a lot. And it just makes me wonder how, you think your family's got problems? Any of your family's perfect? Don't raise your hand because I know you're lying. All families have stuff, right? Every family has stuff. Any of you ever had one of your brothers kill 70 other of your brothers? Any of you ever had the rest of your family on the other side politically aligned against the one that you helped come to power or to run the family? You read of some of these families in the Old Testament, Anybody ever sold their brother into slavery in Egypt? Just name it. These families in the Old Testament had all kinds of issues. I didn't say did you want to. I said, did you actually do it? It brings a depth to these stories when you try to figure out the personal relationships that are there. It just adds color to it. Here his family just turns on. All right. So let's see, 32-34. Who's got that? It's a short one. Won't take you long. Teresa, thank you.
Now therefore arise by night, you and the people who are with you, and lie in wait in the field. And it shall come about in the morning, as soon as the sun is up, that you shall rise early and rush upon the city. And behold, when he and the people who are with him come out against you, who shall do to them whatever you can? So Abimelech and all the people who were with him arose by night and lay in wait against Shechem in 4 companies.
Okay, so Zebul, the ruler, so Abimelech doesn't live right in Shechem. He lives right in that area. And he set up Zebul as the ruler of the city. And so Zebul is realizing, hey, this is going south quick. We need some help over here. So he sends a message to Abimelech and says, come tonight. So that tells you it's not very far away, because they're walking or riding donkeys or horses or whatever. And he's got to assemble however many soldiers he's got. Come tonight, lay in wait, and when they come out tomorrow, kill them. We need your help over here. Set up in 4 companies and get ready for a battle. And we're really going to need your help. So Abimelech does that. And they went and they set up in 4 companies against the city of Shechem. Okay, 35-41.
Hey, Barry,
Yeah.
before you go on, can
Sure.
I ask a question? How much is Abimelech the ruler over right now? Is it just Shechem, or does it carry on to other parts of it?
It's a small area. It's not, most of the judges are more localized.
Okay.
And it's, as Kenny has showed the map, the Valley of Jezreel in that area is primary. Shechem, I believe, is a little further north than that. But it's fairly localized area. It's not the entire, as we would think of Israel, the kings and north and south and all that. It's not that full country. Okay, 35-41. Artemi again, thank you.
And Gael the son of Obed went out and stood in the entrance of the gate of the city. And Abimelech rose up and all his army with him from the places of ambushes. And when the Gael saw the people, he said to Zebul, behold, a multitude comes down from the mountains. He answered him, thou seest the shadows of the mountains, as if they were the heads of men. This is thy mistake. Again Gael said, behold, there comes people down from the middle of the land. One troop comes by way and looks towards the oak. And the Zebul says to him, where is now thy mouth wherewith thou sayest, who is Abimelech that should serve him? Is not this the people which thou didst despise? Go out and fight against him. So Gael went out in the sight of the people of Shechem, and fought against Abimelech, who chased and put him to flight, and drove them to the city. And many of them were slain of his people, even to the gate of the city. And Abimelech sat down in Rumah, but Zebul drove Gael and all his companions out of the city, and would not suffer them to abide in it. So that the day following, the people went out in the field, and it was told to Abimelech.
Okay, so the guy who has conspired with the Shechemites is in Shechem, and he comes out in the morning, and what a beautiful morning, and walks out the gates, and he looks over one way, and wow, that looks like an army coming over here. And the ruler Zebul, who'd called for him, said, that's just your imagination. You're just seeing shadows. Any of you who ever have hiked or hunted or been out, you know that your eyes can play tricks on you. You can look at something a couple of times before you see it. Guy was showing me a video yesterday. He had been elk hunting, and they're just watching just trees and bushes, and all of a sudden 2 antlers come up in between it. And then, is that what I think it is? So I can see, the guy coming out and really? And then he looks the other way. Wait a minute, there's people over here too. And what does Zebul say to him? Now that he's recognized armies are there.
You had a big mouth, go fight him.
Yeah, where's all your big talk now? You said Abimelech was nothing worse than or nothing better than an old donkey or whatever he called him, And now you got to get your armies and go fight him. Because you shot your mouth off, and now you've got to stand up for what you said and what you did. Any of you ever been in that position? Maybe not with an army, but ever said something you went, oh, I wish I might want to take that back. That really wasn't the best thing I should have said. Gaul was in that position big time. Now he's got his life and his soldiers' lives on the line here, and Abimelech has come over to say, oh, you don't like who I am? Well, we'll just see about that. And so he chases them to the gates of the city, kills, says a whole bunch of them were killed. Again, another bloody, messy battle. I don't know if it's just me, but, I think of battles today and people shooting at each other and bombing each other. It's horrible and it's all that. But back in this time and in the Middle Ages, when it was hand-to-hand combat with swords and mauls, and I think that had to be just the bloodiest, goriest scene after a battle that you could ever imagine. It just, body parts laying around. Doesn't sound like a great fun time to me by any means. Okay, 42 through 49. Who's got that? All right, thank you, Randy.
The next day, the people of Shechem went out to the field, and this was reported to Abimelech. So he took his men, divided them into 3 companies, and set out an ambush in the fields. When he saw the people coming out of the city, he rose to attack them. Abimelech and the companies with him rushed forward to a position at the entrance of the city gate. Then 2 companies attacked those in the field and struck them down. All that day, Abimelech pressed his attack against the city until he had captured it and killed its people. Then he destroyed the city and scattered salt all over it. How far do you want me to go?
49.
Okay. On hearing this, the citizens in the tower of Shechem went to the stronghold of the temple of El-Berith. When Abimelech heard that they had assembled there, he and his men went up Mount Zalman. He took an axe and cut off some branches which he had lifted to his shoulders. He ordered the men with him, quick, do what you have seen me do. So all the men cut branches and followed Abimelech. They piled them against the stronghold and set it on fire, with the people still inside. So all the people in the tower of Shechem, about 1,000 men and women, also died.
Seems like every little passage here has some death and destruction in it, huh? That's what happens when you don't follow God. So the first day, Gael had come out and Shechem had attacked them and driven them back into the city, killed a bunch of his warriors. And the next day, for some reason, these people decide we're going to go out into our fields again. Usually what happens is they would stay within the city. That's why the walls were built on the cities in these times, is that people's fields were out and then they would come back into the city for protection. And they would stay inside the city walls. So they went out to do their work in their fields, and Abimelech and his army come in towards the gates and set up, okay, now you can't get back into the city. And they kill the rest of them. And then it says a bunch of them were gathered at this temple. Remember when Gideon had made that ephod, it says that became a snare to their family, and the people went and followed Baals and Baal-berith. This is the Tower of Berith. This was an area where they worshiped this god. And what did we discuss about towers a couple of weeks ago in the cities? What was their purpose?
Lookout.
Lookout. It was to keep, it was the highest point so they could see when enemies were coming. Obviously they weren't doing a good job of that at this particular time, because it also says that they were using this as a temple. So it was a multi-purpose tower. It was supposed to be for protection. They obviously weren't watching because Abimelech surprised them, and yet they're also using it as a temple to worship these false gods. And what does Abimelech do to them?
Kill them all.
Goes up in the hills, chops up a bunch of trees. That fire had to be pretty hot. Any of you ever tried to burn green wood? You got to get it pretty hot in order to burn. You usually like firewood to age a little bit and dry out. So they cut fresh wood, they went up, stacked it all up against the tower, lit it on fire, got the fire burning. And this had to be a pretty big tower. 1,000 people? I mean, that's not just, a little spiral staircase up to a tower somewhere. This is a pretty big, I picture it like a silo or something like that, some big structure with 1,000 people in it, multi-level, and just burn it to the ground and destroyed them. So Abimelech's on a roll, and then who can read the last part here, 50 to 57? We'll finish up the chapter real quick. Thanks, Warren.
Then Abimelech went to Thebez, and he encamped against Thebez and took it. But there was a strong tower in the city, and all the men and women, all the people of the city, fled there and shut themselves in. Then they went up to the top of the tower. So Abimelech came as far as the tower and fought against it. And he drew near the door of the tower to burn it with fire. But a certain woman dropped an upper millstone on Abimelech's head and crushed his skull. Then he called quickly to the young man, his armor bearer, and said to him, "Draw your sword and kill me, lest men say of me, a woman killed him." So his young man thrust him through, and he died. And when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, they departed, every man to his own place. Thus God repaid the wickedness of Abimelech, which he had done to his father by killing his 7 brothers. And all the evil of the men of Shechem, God returned on their own heads. And on them came the curse of Jotham, the son of Jerusalem.
Okay, so Abimelech is not done yet. He decides, I'm going to go over to this other city that we don't have record of exactly what they did, but evidently they were on Shechem's side. They had evidently gotten on the wrong side of Abimelech. And this worked out before, burnt their tower down, so I'm going to try that again. It was a good battle plan. Except there was a lady who had a little bit of a different idea about it. And she dropped a hunk of a millstone off the tower and bonked him on the head, crushed his head, broke his skull, depending on which version you're reading. But he's not dead, he just knows he's dying. And he says to his armor bearer, "Hey, run me through, be done with me." Not the first time we've heard that story either. Don't want to be killed, don't want to be said it was killed with a woman. And the whole point of the story is that God used the evil of Abimelech to repay the evil of Shechem. And then he used something else to repay the evil of Abimelech. That he had prophesied, you guys are not going to get away with this. You've made a mess of things, and God's will was done. That's what that chapter is about, that God's going to get his will done no matter what we crazy humans think we're going to do. Thank you for your comments and all that, and Kenny should be back Wednesday night to start in chapter 10.
I'll go out and live in peace.
So, government come?
Yeah. Reading, so it's possible. Is that right? Decided?